Boruto's predestined fate to die at the hands of Jura has been averted. Kawaki was the singularity that changed destiny itself, which Boruto seemed to be aware of. But how? Well, this chapter revealed something very interesting, which is that Boruto might have knowledge on the future even Kashin Koji himself doesn't possess. Now this has a lot to do with Momoshiki's ability to see the future, which Boruto inherited. It has manifested a few times in the past, first with Momoshiki seeing Boruto's future to lose everything, and then with Boruto in chapter 75 viewing those events for himself as well. It is a cheat code to some extent which allows one to shape the future, which is what Boruto did in a recent chapter. You see, as stated by Kashin Koji, Kawaki wasn't supposed to be there. He saw multiple futures using prescience, infinite futures to be exact, and not one of them showed this happening. Yet when Boruto's predestined fate was finally upon him, prescience gave him an update. It showed him a new slate of futures, infinite possibilities, now possessing one in which Kawaki saves Boruto's life. And this might seem like pure coincidence, Boruto's just very lucky, but I beg to differ. You see, there's this one panel in this chapter, actually multiple panels to be exact, that indicates that Boruto knew that this was going to happen beforehand. The first one, which is a bit more obvious, is when Kawaki first arrived on the battlefield. And Boruto wasn't surprised by this. He seems upset actually that Kawaki was late to the party. And though one could try to explain this away by saying that Boruto told him to get his limiters removed so they can fight Jura, so why would he be surprised by this? But this argument doesn't make sense to me because even if Boruto knew that Kawaki was going to get his limiters removed eventually, he didn't know that it was going to happen so soon or at this exact moment. I mean, he's not even showing any sign of relief. Like, damn, Kawaki got his limiters removed, I'm sure glad that he showed up at this exact moment. It's more so like, yo bro, you should have been here a few seconds earlier, which implies that he knew that Kawaki was going to show up at this point in time. Now of course, this by itself, one could say, this is a reach, and that's totally fine, but when you couple this with what happened beforehand, I think it makes much more sense. You see, back in chapter 22, Boruto told Konohamaru to take Sarada and the others and head towards where they first met up with the Sand Shinobi. And this is later followed up in this chapter as well, with Konohamaru telling Mitsuki to rendezvous to that location. He tells him that it's Boruto's instructions, he thinks he has a plan. And how they portray this is very interesting because they have Mitsuki reacting like he's confused about why Konohamaru would say this. It's given an unusual level of focus on this simple instruction. And then they go back to it later on in the chapter as well. Once they got to the location, Konohamaru for some reason has to say again that this is the spot Boruto specified. And Mitsuki is once again questioning, why are we here? It's almost as if the writer is trying to place some level of importance on the fact that Boruto is the one who sent them there. And he does it once again a few pages after this, where Mitsuki questions again, why did Boruto choose this location? And his hypothesis is that Boruto is going to teleport them using Flying Thunder God. Now of course we know this can't be the case because as explained by Kashin Koji, the reason why Boruto can't escape from Jura is because he needs time to focus to teleport long distances, which is what happened when he tried to teleport to the Ten Tails dimension. So since Jura is not going to give him time to do that, Boruto is pretty much stuck fighting Jura, and Boruto of course knows this. So why would Boruto send Konohamaru to this location to teleport them away using a jutsu he won't have time to use? It just doesn't make sense. So obviously that wasn't Boruto's plan. The plan was to have them meet up with Delta, which is why Delta shows up later on at this location. Now why is this relevant to Boruto's ability to see the future? Well of course, the reason why Boruto knows that Delta was going to show up at this exact location is because he saw it in the future. He saw it happen. The same way of course he knew Kawaki would show up on the battlefield. Kawaki arrived with Delta, so he saw both of them. And he knew that Delta was going to show up at this location looking for them, so he sent them to that location. And by the way, Boruto is doing this absent of any assistance from Kashin Koji, because again, Koji revealed that he didn't know that Kawaki was going to show up. He didn't show up in any of his infinite possibilities, but Boruto knew, clearly. And that's because Boruto changed the future by telling Kawaki to go get his limiters removed, and this was confirmed by Koji in this chapter. He said Boruto told Kawaki something over the last few days, and Kashin Koji hadn't received an update to prescience within the same period. So my theory is that, and I could be wrong, but I believe that after Boruto told Kawaki about his limiters in chapter 15 I believe, or chapter 16, the future simply changed, and because the future changed, it triggered Momoshiki's ability to see the future, which of course gave Boruto visions of the new updated future. And this somewhat gives some credence to the theory that Boruto saw Sarada die in the future, which goes back to something Boruto said in chapter 6 after his squabble with Mitsuki. He said, "I swear to rescue Master Sasuke and everyone else who was turned into a tree, or into trees, as well as." And this part is really important because I'm sure some people believe that it was just referring to Naruto and Hinata, which is a popular theory and it does make sense why he would say this. But when the panel zooms in on Boruto and Sarada, it does seem as if the implication here is that the person he also wants to save is Sarada, which implies that Boruto saw a future where Sarada dies as well. And I'm sure one could simply say that this was just Kashin Koji using prescience, but I want you guys to remember that Boruto is supposed to die in the current fight versus Mr. Jura. So it makes more sense that Sarada dies while Boruto is alive, which is how he would be able to prevent it from happening. So if this is implying that Boruto saw a future where Sarada dies, it couldn't have been from prescience, it had to have been from Momoshiki's ability, or maybe even the Jogan, if you guys want to say that, but I'm going to focus on Momoshiki's ability in this video. Now with that said, there's one big problem I have with these abilities to see the future, and it stems from something Ikimoto said recently, which is that Momoshiki's ability to see the future is inferior or considered inferior to Kashin Koji's prescience. And on paper this would make sense. Kashin Koji has a Shinjutsu from Shibai, the great Shibai, okay, world destroying Shibai, beats Goku, whatever. Whereas Momoshiki is kind of just a normal Otsutsuki, and his abilities may be a Shinjutsu, maybe isn't, hasn't been confirmed, I guess we'll see. So it kinda does make sense on paper. But when you try to analyze them and see how they function, it just comes off a bit weird. Because for one, Kashin Koji's ability allows him to see infinite possible futures. So in some sense, Koji has the ability to see every future but not the future. So it's like you know everything but nothing at the same time. Whereas when it comes to Momoshiki, he has the ability to see the future. Whenever Momoshiki sees something, it happens. It goes back to the entire thing about Boruto losing everything. He saw it happening, it did happen. Boruto did lose everything from Momoshiki's perspective. The events that Boruto saw later on in chapter 75, those are the same events Momoshiki saw back in chapter 10. And those events played out exactly as he saw them. The only difference, and I think this is one of the biggest misconceptions in this fandom, and I covered this in my video on Boruto's omnipotence and how it's actually beautifully written, is that Momoshiki thought those events would lead to Boruto losing his will to live, which clearly didn't happen. But that part isn't the future that he saw. He didn't see Boruto turning over his body to him in the future. He expected it to happen. He thought that was going to happen based on the futures that he did see. So contrary to popular belief, the future Momoshiki witnessed didn't change. It played out exactly as he saw it. The only difference is that his expectation of what was going to happen next because of that future was wrong. He simply underestimated Boruto's will to live. It wasn't an indictment on the ability itself. So in some sense, Momoshiki's future sight is actually better than Koji's prescience, because Momoshiki sees the future. He sees the future that's going to happen, not infinite possibilities, and then he has to figure out which one might happen and then prepare for multiple possibilities, and then that one might not happen, or that one might happen, or the future is going to change. No, Momoshiki sees what is going to happen, and that's, in my opinion, way better than prescience. Now, of course, both abilities have some limitations. Momoshiki's future sight doesn't give him the ability to see his own future, and Kashin Koji's prescience doesn't allow him to see the future. And he also can't just trigger the ability. It seems like it just comes in whenever it wants to, which of course is a byproduct of him having the cells of Shibai and him being a cyborg and not an Otsutsuki. So that's not really a limitation of the ability, but more so a limitation of Kashin Koji. So maybe the benefit that prescience has over Momoshiki's future sight, which would kind of validate Ikimoto's comments, is that the user can see his own future as well, which of course is a very good benefit. So I guess I'll pose the question, which one do you think is better? Having the ability to see infinite possible future but not the future, which also allows you to see infinite possible futures of yourself as well, as opposed to having the ability to see the future that is going to happen for everyone else, but just not yourself. Because I think that is pretty much the difference between them. With that said, that's it for the video. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.